J'ai trouvé la solution pour pas que t'aies peur. Parce qu'en fait, c'est une feuille avec tout.
Right.
Ouais, mais c'est tellement sympathique.
Ouais, mais
Next is the elasticity, concept of elasticity. Many of you guys might have heard about it or studied it in the principles of economics courses you had in in your first degree, right? So it measures, basically elasticity is a measure of responsiveness of quantity demanded to price changes, and we will be actually to elasticity ideas or the concept of elasticity to in pricing decisions and promotions and sales. So we as business students, we need to know how responsive the consumers are to the price changes, and based on that we basically do not experiment, but as the case of supermarkets, giving a certain price and waiting for a while and to see the volume of sales, and if it's little, then it is a very elastic product in the sense that the demand for this product is elastic, so people are not buying at high prices, so you have to reduce the prices and make or made other decisions in terms of promotions or sales. Starbucks is an example where price sensitivity is very high usually, right? Coffee is coffee, and usually you will have the same satisfaction from drinking different types of coffees. Obviously, if you are a very sort of hardcore coffee lover, that will be a different case for you. Just like luxury products lovers who always buy the luxury product, that they just want to buy that, they buy it. Yes, that this is a different. But when you look at aggregate case, Starbucks is actually applying the case of price sensitivity or elasticity in their business model. They create such an environment where just you enter the store, you will just feel like you want to stay there before even buying the coffee, right? This environment, the smell, the feeling when you enter compared to small coffee shops, right? So they tend to reduce, they're trying to reduce the price sensitivity of their products, the demand for their products. Yeah, so that's a clear or an interesting example of application of elasticity idea in business. Now, if the product demand curve is flat, a case here, this is basically reflecting the high elasticity. As you can see, small drop in the price leads to huge increase in the demand for the product, right? So if the product has a demand curve in this form, the company experience a huge boost in the demand for the small drop in their products. You can think of iPhones in this case, yeah? Decline in the price will probably convince some people to buy this product, yeah? So in addition to existing customers, there will be more demand from new entrants. If the product has a demand curve with a steep slope, like the one we have, an example, huge drop actually creates little change in quantity demanded, or the opposite, huge increase from P0, P1, for example, just reduces the demand by little or small amount. So here the demand is inelastic. So here we have elastic demand in this case and inelastic demand in this case. So in the exam, if you are explaining, for example, as a case here, the difference between elastic and inelastic demand and given examples, then it will be easier to just come up with the demand curves of flat slopes and steep, not flat slopes, flat curves and steep curves. This would help you to then generate ideas about where you could have seen this case where the application was more relevant in business, for example. Maybe when you're going to shops and you see, or maybe reading newspapers. So use these examples as a supporting claim of support for your answer in the exams. Yeah, go on.
What would be an example of an inelastic price?
Yeah, good point. Can anyone think of because it's in the next couple of slides I'll come to it. But if you have any ideas, anyone? What's inelastic? What product will have inelastic demand?
It'd be like cigarettes.
Exactly, cigarettes. Cigarettes. No matter the price, you have to puff a few a day, isn't it? You have to keep smoking because of the need for it. Yeah. Anything else? This is a very strong petrol. Yeah, that's one example. Given all the engines that we now have, the cars run on the petrol and crude oil, it's very inelastic at the moment. Obviously, elasticity as a concept changes over time. It will not stay the same with the product because I'll see the factors you'll see the factors in a minute. But yeah, it will change over time. Anything else? Petrol, technology. What do you mean?
No matter how much the price of computer rise, we will always have to
buy a PC or an iPad or something else. Yeah. Okay. More or less, technology is there. Yeah.
There is water as well.
Water. These groceries, the what you buy on a daily basis, are all inelastic. You have to buy bread, water, rice. Well, rice to some extent, beef to some extent, lamb to some extent. You may be happy without beef, depending on a human being may be happy with it, depending on the income, obviously. But they are mostly inelastic. Elastics are usually, you can think of when you go towards luxury branding. Technology is more elastic than inelastic. But at the moment, because we are in the age of technology, it may be at some point becomes too difficult to part without technologies, without gadgets. Yeah, even today, the youngsters playing the games, they grow up with the games and they feel that like the games are part of them. It's like food for them. Yeah, so these youngsters becoming older and older all the time, the technology becomes part of their daily life. Yeah, maybe not yours now because you're not playing on IPC, but these young people, that especially in China and South Korea and Southeast Asia, young generation live with the technology and sleep with the technology and wake up with technology. And even families, apparently, the cases I read in the newspaper, the catastrophic and positive cases, they just it's like a food for them. Anyway, so these are the cases, but we'll come to this in a minute. Is it clear how to sort of describe a cases in model? Yes, go on.
No, it's just if you are asking like for a definition of elastic demand, can we write like the sentence for A?
Yeah, yeah. Small change in price is to a large in demand. Yeah, you can.
Okay,
but
so
obviously, just give a good example. Yeah.
Okay, so if we, by example, put this sentence and then go these two things,
Yeah,
it's okay?
yeah, yeah.
And explain.
Obviously, when you draw this, you have to explain what the arrows mean and all this. So it's ability to describe using it. It's not about economics. It's about your application of economics in business and being able to apply all the concepts. So as a definition, it's just one line, and it gives probably the lowest mark. But the highest mark comes from how you intelligently apply it and be able to justify your application.
Okay, but it's just that the first
Yeah, that's
sentence
enough.
is like
That's what the definition is, yeah, for the elastic demand. Well, I don't know how to define it all the way around. I mean, you're right. So it's
Okay.
just one line. You can use a lot of different words if you are very good at writing. Yeah, but yeah, that will be sufficient. Now, what determines elasticity? We said with time, but new products and also other things that determine elasticity as well. That these are the substitutes. For example, there are substitutes for coffee, mobile phone operators, tablets, and etc. Most of the items that we consume usually have substitutes, and as a result, most of the items could be elastic. Because if there is a substitute, we tend to switch to other products as soon as the price goes up, right? So it's the elasticity measures the responsiveness of the demand to the changes in price usually, right? And substitute products usually determine number of substitutes that exist in the market, determine the elasticity of demand for a product. However, for cigarettes, I don't know what substitute could there be. For example, it could be this new electrical version of cigarettes. What do you call this?
E-cigarettes.
E-cigarettes, or the thing is that they could substitute, but they are still nicotine, aren't they? You could still, the cigarette itself is nicotine, so it's still same. Beer, there maybe wine could be a substitute, but still beer is a beer. Someone addicted to beer will always want to. The satisfaction from beer is different, isn't it, compared to wine, and the same with wine. So number of substitutes determine elasticity. Yeah? But there are certain items there where elasticity determinants may not be. Well, in theory, they exist, but in reality, they may not exist. It's the different preferences. And determinants of elasticity is, another one is the time. New products develop over time. Think about cocktail drinks that you buy when you go out with your friends. A few years ago, there was little market for this, or only a few bars were offering this. But today you have huge number of them. If one bar increases the price for cocktails, you can switch to others, right? There is a high elasticity of demand here. But a few years back, when the product was new, it was just being offered with some creative bars. Everyone would go there and would purchase there. But over time, and at the time, the demand for cocktails was inelastic because there was only one or two bars providing this, supplying this. But with time, it expanded. All other bars started offering cocktails. Have you tried cocktails? Cocktail drinks that mix alcohol with other drinks. Spices, and you can think of that. I haven't tried it, so I don't know. But if you try it, you will see that if it's expensive in one bar, you tend to switch to other one. But 5 years back, or maybe longer, but I don't remember when they started the market. But cocktail market for cocktail drinks for the youth is a relatively new market. Bars used to just give you one sort of type of product, like beer and wine and alcohol. But now they're more creative. They tend to mix up everything. Anyway, so that's yeah. Did anyone say anything?
No, they're just banging things.
Okay, sorry. And definition of the market also affects the elasticity, depending on how competitive the market is, or maybe it's monopolistic market. Usually in monopolistic markets, the monopolies offer one product and there's no substitute. So the product demand for this product is more inelastic. Yeah, in competitive markets, by name it suggests it's competitive. There are different products of the same, different types of the same product, or the same product but priced relatively differently, slightly different, not much. So it depends. Elasticity also is determined by how markets function, or what the market structure is. And new entrants, for example, the case of this drink, cocktail market, for example. With the new entrants, the demand for cocktails become more elastic. It used to be inelastic because the one or two was providing, but over time the market became so competitive that now it's more, the demand is more elastic. So you can switch between the providers of sports or the bars, between the parts, in other words. Now it's the case now that I'm going to show you now about the grocery stores that in the UK. So this is the share data, percentage of out of 100%. That Tesco holds 29 to 21% from 2014 to 15. So I had in mind that all data 33%. It looks like the latest shows that it used to be 33 some years ago. But anyway, so in this case we're looking at the 12 weeks to 5th of January, the market share, and the red bar shows the 2015 results, and blue bar shows the 2014 results. And one thing you can see is all the big companies, all the big grocery stores, have their shares sliced, basically slashed. They lost a bit of a share, altogether. And these lost shares are captured by these small retailers or grocery stores. And Iceland. Sorry, I was going to say Pound. Iceland for some reason didn't change, but Aldi and Lidl has been growing in shares, and Waitrose is growing as well. So a few years back, these were dominant, and the demand for their product was more inelastic. Now we see price wars between these companies, and and these firms are entering the market by offering the same products and maybe even better quality in some cases, and there's a switch. So the elasticity over time has changed for the products overall, overall grocery market, not as simple because there are millions of types of products they sell. So overall demand for their products have changed hugely, and over time the small companies are capturing the lost shares by these companies. But this is the case of how the markets can be analyzed using the concept of elasticity of demand. Okay, any questions on this? Now we look at a little bit of mathematics, the basics of it. We don't do much of calculation, but there's a case study that we do next week where we do a bit of calculus, I think. So this is the formula, and in the final exam there will be an example of a question on this calculation. But so long as you remember the formula, this part is easier to remember. This will be fine. You will not be given a formula sheet, so you will have to just memorize this formula, and I guess it won't be hard to remember. So elasticity usually denoted by epsilon, and it's the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price. So we're looking at the sensitivity of demand to prices, because the prices are in the denominator. So per unit of change in price, how much is the demand change? Basically, that is measured by epsilon here, or captured by epsilon. And the way to write it in a simple way is like change in quantity demanded over change in price times the price over quantity demanded at that point in time.
They're the same thing.
It's the same thing, yeah. It's just percentage change in quantity demanded is basically today's demand minus yesterday's demand divided by quantity. And this one is actually yesterday's price and today's price and yesterday's price divided by quantity. If you look at the percentage change, you know how the formula is basically. Arithmetic percentage change formula is P1 minus P0 over P0. So that this will be the changes in quantities and prices, and these are the denominator prices and quantities in the original formula. I guess this is not that difficult to sort of learn or to study. Yes.
If it's above 0, it means that it's elastic, and below it's inelastic? Or?
No, elasticity usually we tend to use the positive aspect of it. The thing is it's always between 0 and infinity. It could be 20, but shouldn't be less than 0 basically. In other words, less than there is a negative. We usually look at positive elasticities. That's what it is just saying, this expression.
Okay, so it just...
it's always positive.
Okay, and it's just for the elasticity. So if it's inelastic, it's...
It will be less than 1. Yeah, we'll come to that in a minute.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
It's just telling us that it's always positive. Okay. However, always when you calculate elasticity, you get a negative value. So you have to take the absolute value of it. And when you're looking at price elasticity of demand, we're looking at the magnitude of that value, not the actual sign. So we ignore the signs. We usually look at the sign. Because notice that demand curve is downward sloping, isn't it? It's usually negative. Elasticity value will always be negative, because demand and quantities are negatively related. So you will always get a negative epsilon. But when analyzing this, you look at the magnitude and take the positive value always. So just ignore the negative sign. There's a special case where you look at the income elasticity of demand. Then negative makes sense. Positive and negatives make sense. They're different sort of two opposites of the spectrum here. But in this case, it's all about positive values and magnitude. It's the magnitude. So there's an example here. Next slide. Is it visible? It looks like it's not dark enough here, but yeah. So the first row shows the case of perfectly inelastic demand. So price, percentage change in price is 10%, percentage change in demand is 0, then 0 over 10 equals 0, and when epsilon is 0, we say it's perfectly inelastic. It's like perfect correlation and perfect negative and positive correlation. That's case that here applies as well. We have two extremes, perfect inelastic and perfect elastic, and in between you have different values here. perfect and perfects are the two extremes. So keep that in mind just in case. And if a value is less than 1, as I said earlier, there is an inelastic demand. So that's when there's an example here. Then the quantity demanded is less. In other words, there are products where price increases do not, reduce the demand completely. There is little sort of reduction, but because these products are necessity that we have to buy, we usually have inelastic demand for them. Not perfect inelastic. I don't know what's perfectly inelastic. In reality, it could be air if you sell the air, that you need oxygen, right? But water, for example, in some countries, water needs to be bought. I think Gulf Arab countries usually you don't have the water; it's quite scarce there, so you have to buy them. And some people who live it there, they even joked, students, that petrol was cheaper than a bottle of water there, in terms of the same thing. I guess you may know.
No, actually.
You're not from
Lebanon.
Are you from Lebanon? Okay, you may have the water there. But it's the Gulf area where it's always sandy and desert, you have to buy the water there. It is not, I don't know if, of course there's tap water, but it's not drinkable usually, I guess it's salty. Okay, it's inelastic demand. We usually go with values between the two perfect extremes. No, we won't have perfect elastic demand as well. It's just two sort of extremes in theory and reality. And you could also have unit elasticity where percentage change in price, certain percentage change leads to the same percentage change in demand. No matter the magnitude is, but if the percentage change are the same, then you have unit elasticity. So 10% increase in the price leads to 10% reduction in demand. Perfectly valid case. A case of elastic demand is when you have, this formula is missing, but you guess what it is now anyway, it's 2. So when you have the elasticity higher than 1, that is elastic demand. And these are usually products, when you go towards the luxury products. The technology is a case of elastic demand, but at some point, as I said, maybe inelastic. University courses are offering more elastic as well. If all the MBA courses are expensive, obviously students tend to, hold back on spending and then wait until the market for prices in the MBA prices set by the universities for MBA courses decline. So these are courses very elastic. Travel or holidays, for example, holiday packages we buy. The hospitality industry, we don't go on holidays if the prices are high usually in general, and we tend to go when the prices stabilize and decline over time. Yeah, so these are examples of where there's an elastic demand for the products. And for a 10% change in price is an infinitely large demand decline, for example, or increase. This is usually the extreme case, and it, in reality, again, doesn't exist. But two extremes basically are perfect examples of where we could go with the elasticity. In between, there are values that we can take, or we can use in business applications. Now, with the perfectly linear curve, like in this case here, we will have the same slope, right? If the curve was concave up a bit, like this, or with all these wiggles around certain line, it would be difficult to measure the elasticity. Elasticity would change at each point when you have this sort of curve. And even here with the lines, it will change when you analyze them. What we need here is the formula. Remember the formula to calculate the elasticities. We need the change in quantity over change in price, right? So that is basically inverse of the slope. Do you remember from the calculus class that slope is rise over run? Yeah? Let me go back. This is actually inverse slope of that line. If it's rise over run, this should be on the numerator and this quantity should be on the denominator here. So this is actually this part here, this part to memorize for the exam, you can think of this as an inverse slope of the line. And you then remember that it's rise over run. If you take the inverse, it gives you this part. And times it by price over demand. So we will use this formula now in this example, for example, here. So we know that slope at any point here is the same. However, because the formula here has a second component, which is this, the elasticity will not be the same. This may be the same, this will stay the same. But this part will not stay the same. So it will change. At different pricing points, so let's look at this. At different points here, at this point here, for example, elasticity is different. It's a low price. So changing the price doesn't have much effect on demand when the prices are low for a product. But changing demand when the prices are high, changing the prices when the prices are already high, it has a huge effect. You can think of two mobile phones. The prices for mobile phones, when they're lower, increasing the mobile phone price by £5, for example, or 5%, will not have much effect if the price already is low, because low value increasing by a 5%, it adds on a low increment. But look at iPhone. It's already £900, you said last time? It's already there, for example, £900. Changing it by 10% will reduce the price right here. It gives you the wider demand increase. So high prices, at a point where the prices are high, elasticity will be high as well. So we have elastic demand. And there's a point here, it's not described here, right in the middle, it's usually a unit elasticity. Percentage change at that point in the price gives you the same percentage change in the demand, quantity demanded. But as we go down, as the prices go down, the quantity demanded is increasing. But if you measure the elasticity of the demand, given the price here, this will be low and less than 1 inelastic. So the reaction when the product prices are low will be smaller. And the sensitivity of demand to the price changes when the price is already slow, so already low is going to be low. Is that clear? That at different stages or at different points in demand curve, we will have different elasticities. So keep this in mind. Demand elasticity will not stay the same for the same product. It will change over time and over different price ranges as well. Yeah? And it's time to, yeah.
Sorry.
It's now time to introduce a new topic. Well, it's a new variation of elasticity measure. It's the income elasticity and cross price elasticity. We discussed that income usually affects the demand, and it's even one of the factors that shift the demand curve. And we can now measure sensitivity of demand, quantity demanded, usually we call it quantity demanded, to the changes in price. Sorry, to the changes in income. I don't have the values here that we could take. The range, however, is minus infinity to positive infinity. It could be positive or negative. And cross-price elasticity is the sensitivity of product X demand to the price changes in the product Y. So cross-price elasticity for Pepsi it can be calculated if you know the quantity demanded between the time Pepsi changed its price and now, for example. You can estimate that as well. So for example, if Pepsi changes its price, for example, Coca-Cola increased the price, you might expect some of the customers, some of the Coca-Cola lovers switching to Pepsi. Not all, because I think there's a difference in the taste as well. So some people just want Coca-Cola regardless of the price as well is another factor there. But in general, when you're looking at aggregate as we do in economics, we don't look at specific cases. We can give examples of specific cases, but they don't tend to be theorized in economics. We look at aggregate economy. Of course, when you look at microeconomics, of course, when you study the certain markets and certain individuals, then it may be. But in general, we look at aggregate. So cross-price elasticity measures the responsiveness of demand for the product of X when product-wise price changes. Yeah, is that clear? So cross-price elasticity and income. And then I'll give you the actual, well, data-driven, I should say. This is not actual data usually estimated in many cases, and estimates couldn't be really actual. There's just some certain degree of margin of error there. So these are elasticity values for foodstuffs. This first column here is for price elasticity of demand, and the other one is income elasticity of demand. And as I said, ignore the negative signs, because price elasticity of demand is usually, we expect it to be positive, and what matters for us with the price elasticity of demand is the absolute value, the magnitude, not the sign. But when you look at income elasticity of demand, it's the sign and plus the magnitude. So you can expect bread to have unit elasticity, almost there, right? 10% increase in prices of bread, 10% reduction in consumption. Usually, I would think, or I would thought, if I haven't seen this, I expect it to be much less, because demand for bread is expected to be more inelastic. But data is telling us slightly different story. That's the variation between reality and the economic theory. In theory, we expected, to eat, to consume bread, even if the price is high. This is one of the basic foodstuff that we consume every day. But it looks like data suggests that bread is actually near elastic, I should say, near elastic. It's less than 1 in absolute value, but it's close to 1, very close to 1. Milk, for example, much inelastic. Looks like this huge, regardless of the price usually, we tend to buy more milk. No matter how much the price changes, the demand tends to be high, tend to have little response to prices. So basically, 10% increase. I don't know how they calculated this in terms of percentage chances, but percentage chances have in prices, high percentage change in prices do not have much effect on demand for milk. Basically, it's inelastic demand. Cheese and sea lamb, it's quite elastic value here. The value is clearly above 1, and the demand appears to be quite elastic. Pork, the same, more or less the same. I mean, close to 1. Fish, and then you can see that these are based on estimated data between 1988 and 2000. And look at the income elasticity of demand. This measures the responsiveness of demand to changes in income, household income, for example. Between this period, the average income elasticity for bread is 0.12. It's inelastic value. Yeah, its value is less than 1, so demand is inelastic in terms of income. But milk it has a negative elasticity. So as we said, there is the income elasticity is determined by the sign as well, unlike the case of the price elasticity of demand. And when you see negative income elasticities for a product, then this product is usually inferior good. Inferior. In the sense that we talked about inferior goods, haven't we? As we become richer and richer, we tend to consume less of it, right? So it turns out it is an inferior product, like eggs here. Rice is not here, is it? Because rice is another example that may potentially have a negative elasticity, income elasticity. So the positive values imply the good is normal good. These products are normal products that we consume on a daily basis. With the rise in income, we consume more of them. But with the rise in income, we tend to consume apparently less milk and fewer eggs. But notice that this is for one country. I think this is for the UK. I should check. Yeah, ONS, Office for National Statistics. I should have checked it before, but this Office for National Statistics is a British organization. It's a government organization that collects all the data from supermarkets and all this retail stores, and then has calculated this for the period. Now, also, you should understand this, that this is much wider time period. The time span is wider here, longer, sorry. If it's 1998 and 2000 period of data, maybe there's a difference between this value and then the value that's calculated for the subset of the data. This, as we said, elasticities change over time, so then this could be different. Yeah, this could be affected. The elasticities are affected by obviously the trend, preferences, and all the other factors. So between that period, we have whole lot of different factors that changed over time. The recessions and all this, all the data is in there. Okay. There are a number of questions that I want to look at with you. Can you read the questions, guys? It's the same table, but I just cropped this part. And then there are questions. So what do you think the implications of having a negative elasticity, income elasticity of demand for milk? What do you think the implications for the farmers? As a business owner, as a farmer, and if you see that in the past, and notice that this is past data. It doesn't necessarily mean that the same happens in the future, because as we said, the times are changing. With the technology comes and consumption patterns change. But assuming that past is the good predictor of future, what do you think with the negative value for the milk, income elasticity? What do you think the
I will use.
sorry, go one or two. Okay, go. Ladies first.
Charge more.
So they could charge more. You mean? Okay, businesses. So we're looking at the prices. So look at the prices.
You can improve the efficiency of production, bring the price to reduce it down.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you could reduce the price. You mean?
The price is the same, sale price
Oh,
to
the
the
same.
consumer, but if you can make it cheaper to milk a cow, I don't
Ah,
know
okay.
that. But
So the cost, reduce the costs. Yeah. Okay, then maintain the prices. Yes. Anyone else?
I will use the milk to do cheese instead.
Okay, so that makes sense because of the positive elasticity. Yeah, that is with rising incomes, we tend to consume more cheese than milk. Yes, that's quite innovative. Anyone else? Anything that implications for the farmers? Yeah.
Drop in the income.
Yeah, it clearly says. Sorry, it clearly says these over time as the incomes rise, there's a drop in income. So one solution to this is that to stay in the market, we have to reduce the costs. That's more feasible in the future than out of business. That's why you see farmers bringing the cows into Tesco and Asda. I think I read it in some time, in the past. Sorry, that the farmers were protesting that these grocery stores were using their bargaining power because they have huge, the amount of market power they have, as we can see, and that they also have ability to determine the prices. Not the farmers. Farmers have price takers because it's very competitive. Yeah. The farmers are price takers in the market. They do not determine the prices. They usually take it what Tesco and others say. So yeah, inferior goods usually imply as income rise, and we know that over time incomes rise. Income do not go down usually in the economy, especially in developing economy, they rise. The inferior good will have little margin over time. The only solution to stay in the business for the farmers is to become more efficient. But it looks like they also hit the brick wall. But yeah, we'll see. Second question. Why do pork and lamb have relatively high price elasticities of demand compared with the other foodstuffs in the table?
They have a substitute.
Which ones?
Beef,
Beef and,
chicken.
you mean the pork?
Yeah.
Pork and lamb, sorry.
Pork and lamb.
We don't have beef, do you? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
there-
lamb and pork, yeah.
Yeah, there is no beef. But there is
Yeah,
a substitute. for
Exactly,
those.
yeah. So it's because they are substitutes, yeah? They usually tend to have price elasticities higher than 1. We can always easily, if the price of lamb increases, people tend to switch to pork, eating pork, or tend to switch back to lamb. But we don't know the price elasticity of beef, but most certainly that it will also be high. And unlike cheese, the substitute doesn't exist. So it's usually more inelastic. Eggs, inelastic, even if they are inferior. Fish, inelastic as well. But these two are substitutes compared to others. Yeah. And however, so let's look at the last point. What are the implications of this for the relative stability or instability of the prices of pork and lamb compared with other foodstuffs?
They would be following the trends.
Do you think the prices are volatile
Yeah, of course, they
or
would be following-
stable?
They would be volatile because they would be
Which
following
prices?
the trends.
Which ones? You mean the prices for the lamb
Pork
and pork?
lamb, they would have volatile prices because they would be following trends.
Which
of
trends?
Of what people are eating at the time,
Okay.
the price trends.
Okay, price trends. Okay, anyone else? Any inputs? So we'll take that and we'll listen to other alternative opinions. Remember, prices. Yeah.
I think the prices are quite stable because
Yeah.
this is basic stuff, so we can't really reduce the costs.
You mean the lamb and pork price?
It's the same for milk.
For milk as well.
At one point, you can't reduce cost anymore. So
Okay,
that's
so-
why I don't really. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? So given that it's a basic stuff, you always buy it, yeah. So
Yeah,
price,
So it's not.
tends to be
It's quite stable. Yeah.
Okay. Any ideas? Any inputs?
I can't read the question.
You cannot read. Sorry. I don't know how to. So you didn't understand. You didn't even hear what I just read.
No.
Probably it's really hard. It's about stability or instability of prices for lamb and pork relative to others. Given the elasticity values, what do you think? Will they stay stable or overall? Or they will fluctuate given the elasticity values?
Since there are substitutes always, they will never always be stable.
They will
Never be stable at all
never be
times.
stable at all times.
They will not.
Sorry?
They will not, of course not.
They will not, okay. Compared to, it's the question is about overall meat products, for example. Think of meat products. That there's a world, in a world there's only two types of meat. Well, in the sense that is lamb and pork exists, that you can derive the meat from. And you also have these products. Now compared to the others in the market, will their product prices be stable or not, given the elasticities? When we look at price stability and instability, we have to think about supply as well. It could be there's a substitute, but what if there's a big shock to the supply and one of the supply dries out? And so that's the point here we're looking at as well. So when product price, the prices, overall price for meat, for example, will probably be stable because changing the price by a huge margin will lead the customers to go to others, right? So not being able to attract more customers, the one who changes the price will put the price back up. We'll have to keep the price there because to get the customers. So eventually the market forces stabilize the price, it will be stable, right? That's what elasticity is causing the price to be stable now. The more competition, you have a competition, you have more or less the same prices, right? So competitive forces shift the prices, towards the equilibrium level where it's not possible to destabilize the pricing apart from by sort of giving a big shock like reducing the supplies of one or two. Then obviously cross price elasticity of lamb will be very high. Yeah, given that lamb declines in supply, right? So this elasticity is usually high elasticity imply stable prices compared to this inelastic. Yeah. You can think of this as monopoly products as well, but we'll come to that when we analyze looking at the market structure. But the clear case here is that compared to others, elastic products with elastic demand will have stable prices overall. However, if there's a big shock to the meat market, obviously there's war, there's something there, the death, what you call this, mad cow death or something like this. These diseases will reduce the supply of meat, and obviously these prices will go up because there's more demand. And analyzing the market, these producers of pork and lamb will obviously increase the prices. Yeah, that's another case. But overall, the elastic products will have stable prices. Now if we look at the business applications again, more of a business here. We look at cost plus pricing, plus pricing, sorry. Total revenues and how elasticities affect revenues. We just discussed one case where high elasticity is implied. Prices has to be stable no matter what the costs are. And some farmers even operating at cost, basically. They actually do not have profits. They tend to increase their revenues. That's all what they can do. It's impossible to increase it given the farming business. Elasticity and the product life cycle. This is the last thing we look at prior to the demand, more quantity demand analysis. So let's look at this case where total revenue could be determined by looking at elasticities. This is a case where the demand is for a product is elastic. Yeah, the flat curve. Now, at P0, the quantity demand is its Q0, and revenue is obviously the area I'm shading here. It is this rectangle area of the rectangle is the revenue, because price times quantity gives us revenue, right? Quantity sold times the price is the revenue. So this would be the area. So this would be our total revenue. But if we reduce the price, we actually lost that much of revenue, but gained that much of revenue from reducing the price. And this only happens when the demand curve is elastic, or demand for the product is elastic, as you can see. So before making pricing decisions, it's important for businesses to analyze the demand curve. It doesn't exist in reality, but we could do market analysis to get an idea of what it is, because this is theoretical curve. We could collect the data, but this is expensive. However, for example, Apple. Again, I'm coming back to this because this is a very easy example to explain and to get a good idea of. If they reduce the price from 900 to 800, they may reduce the price by 200 and lose £200 per handset. But in fact, they bring in more customers, which means huge gains in revenue. Yeah, and £200 here, it will be huge actually, given 200 times quantity here gives us loss, but the quantity of demand or quantity of customers that they gain, extra customers, is actually larger. Yeah, and given that I'm assuming Apple has this elastic demand curve. Yeah. Right, but they don't do usually this case because they don't want to lose on price wars. They want to keep the market dominated in terms of price, in terms of quality, in terms of niche innovations and stuff. To avoid this sort of case in reducing the price, what they have is now 3 different handsets, right? Luxury, we have middle case, and then basic one with the plastic. And we analyze that as well. This is a case for another point in the future. Now, if the demand for the product is inelastic, I should say, and you have the steep curve, you can see that reducing the price, this is magnified, this is a huge reduction, will give us big loss than the gain that we would receive. So the businesses whose products, for whose products the demand is inelastic, then they shouldn't reduce the prices. They would lose instead of gaining. Like bread. A bread manufacturer trying to increase their revenue, and if they reduce their product prices or the bread prices, they can gain little sort of extra quantity demand, because even if bread is at 1p, you always buy 1 or 2, right? Because it's perishable. I mean, if it's iPhone, I can understand you could buy 100 of them because you can sell it at some point. It's bread, so it's inelastic, and it has inelastic demand. So even if it's 1p, you can always have extra units. So it's a little increase in the demand by a huge decline from a huge decline price. So inelastic demand curves tend to command a loss if you reduce the prices to gain more market power. So again, if the idea is to gain market, market share, the companies tend to reduce. Obviously, we still get an extra demand for the product, but they actually lose on the profit objective, profit maximizing objective. Yeah, they lose big losses. And bottom line is this now, 2 points here that we need to understand. If demand is elastic, lowering prices will raise the total revenue only when the demand is elastic for the product. Holiday packages you can think of. Yeah, you do a Google search and see holiday packages are high, you probably don't want to go. And seeing this, if many people do this, many customers do this, companies, in order to increase the demand, slash the prices, and that gives a boost to the quantity demand, and a lot of people go on. So holiday packages have very elastic demand. If demand is inelastic, raising prices will raise total revenue. So you have to increase the price, not reduce. Then you gain more. And that's foodstuffs, for example. An example I gave was bread.
Can you keep that slide up?
Any questions? Actually, I didn't do your attendance. Sorry? Yes, if you can. I just realized I didn't. Sorry for asking you again. I could have done it in live as well. But many of your students aren't still registered, maybe some new joiners, so better to have it in the sheet. Okay, should I move on?
1 second, sorry.
No? Okay. Yeah, no worries. Now, there's this anecdotal evidence of how things don't work usually in business. I guess you know, maybe you don't know this, maybe you know this guy.
Yeah.
Many of you guys. Yeah. If you've been reading the news. This is a very intelligent guy, but did a very silly mistake. He basically increased the price from 13.50 of a drug to 750 in a day. If it's over 10 years, you would expect that he's moving with the trend, as our colleague said, is trend. But he's done it over a day. This is overnight, I should say. What happened is that he's an investment banker. He bought the pharmaceutical company, Turin. I think he has the company, but he bought the drug rights for the drug sales. This is an HIV drug that helps the people to. I think there is no cure for it, but to prolong their life. Or I don't know the specific of the drug, but it is very inelastic. Demand is very inelastic for this product. Apparently, at the time, he thought, I guess, and he got a name, Pharma Bro, basically. Now, if anyone reports his name, he's actually you can do some search as well. His name is Martin Shkreli, and what he did is he put the price up by 5,500%. That's a huge increase in the price without analyzing the demand. The reason he did this, to me it sounds like, is because HIV drugs are rare, he thought there will be still demand. But in fact, there's a backfire, and the market said no to his products. Because one of the companies came out and said, we can supply substitutes for this product for £1, for $1 basically at the time, it was $1. So he actually lost out a lot now. And his investment probably will be his return on investment will probably be negative in the next 2 or 3 years, because he just bought it recently, about a couple of months ago, or maybe a bit more, a longer time ago. And yeah, this is the case of not analyzing the market before putting the price up. He just basically brought the damage to the market and brand that he wanted if you wanted to command or to run. Yeah, that's an example, and this is a very relevant example to this case. It turns out he didn't do sufficient market research. Okay, now the question. If you don't have any question, or the not question, we could continue doing this rather than asking question. How do we, well, it's a question, but I'm going to answer it myself. How do we figure out the demand curve? What the demand curve is? As we said, it exists in theory. It's very hard to draw the actual demand curve, given that demand preference affects the demand, and time affects it, and over time demand shifts or within the sort of the market. One way is to collect big data to get a glimpse of what demand for a product is. You could do market observations, how demand changes over time. So you take the data, look at the amount of sales over time, or number of products sold over time, or volume, in other words, or tastes and preferences changing over time, for example, is another way. So that's seeing how possible determinants of demand have changed over time, and figure out the demand curve. And you could actually create the demand curve yourself by just sketching the graph of it, or using the past information, whatever the past information is, by looking at. So what are the demand determinants? They are prices of substitutes, price of the product, income, we just discussed so far, and time. Yeah, time also affects demand. So you can look at how these four factors could have affected has affected in the past, and then sort of extrapolate the future demands. But usually, past relationships between demand and quantity quantity demanded and the price do not hold. That's another case here, because we're living in the age of technology. Every decade, something, some new factor is affecting, not the price and on the price and affecting the price and quantity demanded. Okay, so let's look at what businesses usually do in these situations. We could do market surveys. This is very time-consuming. Oops. Very time-consuming and expensive. You might have seen someone at the entrance or exit to the station holding and opening their hands and asking you, "Can you spare a few minutes?" These are the guys doing market research more often than not. They're trying to understand consumer preferences by asking you a few questions. Questionnaires, basically. Yeah? Doing questionnaires market. That's what market survey is about. Or another way is looking at is large companies do this usually. They contact all these supermarkets and shops to get the data from them. The market research firms do this again. However, again, market research usually come with huge margin of error. So sample may not be random, or even if it's random, may not be representative of the whole population. You can do, in a country of 62 million people, 1,000 people survey is just, I think, doesn't represent the whole of the population that is surveying. 10,000 even doesn't represent whole demand. So it's very hard to get the actual demand curve here, as you can see. There's a number of sort of points that you have to consider when you're looking at the market research. So this side is more business, so I'm not going into details here. I guess you already know what they are by looking at there. So the respondents may not even be truthful as well when you're asking questions. Some respondents may just want to finish it as soon as possible and just give you the answer that you wanted. However, when it comes to mechanics of calculating the demand, it gets a bit messy now. It gets a bit quantitative. So once you generate the data, you will have to run this. You have to just sort of capture the covariation between the variables and the demand. And each of these, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, and G, these are a measure of elasticity usually. So this B here, so quantity demanded. This is the quantity demanded, number of items sold over time, maybe across products, and the price of each of the item, income, Y, and price of the substitute. There could be 5 substitutes, then each of the prices will be there of substitutes, and price of complements if it's a good that comes with a complement. Yeah. So there's a lot of factors, and you know, statistics usually limits it to certain key points, because you cannot really put 100 different price of substitutes and complements. You run out of degrees of freedom in statistics usually. That's the main problem again. So once we gather the data, you could actually work out what the elasticity of elasticity of demand with respect to price here, which measured by B. The value of B measures the elasticity of demand with respect to price. C measures the elasticity of demand with respect to income. So this is income elasticity, and D here is a cross price elasticity basically, because this is a substitute price, not the price of own product. Now we usually, however, tend to do simple analysis by taking. So this is multivariate example. You have multiple variables, but in statistics we tend to go to simple ones. This is single variable linear regression. Here we have quantity demanded equals some. This is called the slope or intercept coefficient plus the beta. This is the elasticity value price plus the epsilon, which is error. We don't measure usually quantities. We cannot forecast with 100% certainty. So this error takes into account this deviation from the line. And in the next graph, we'll tell you what this error is basically.
So it's not the elasticity?
The error.
Yeah.
No, in this case, it's a statistical term.
Ah, okay.
Guys, this is actually, this epsilon is not the elasticity. Here, it's this one here. Because, you know, here, I mean, it's going to be hard to put elasticity and elasticity. It's epsilon 1, epsilon 2, epsilon, it gets messy. It would rather be B and C and D to make it clear. So this one in statistics, this value, this Latin letter, Greek letter, sorry, is a measure of error in our forecast of quantity demanded given the price. So let me show what it is basically. Have you done statistics before, guys? Done a simple regression? Yeah? No? No? Okay. I'll upload a case where you can see how demand regressions are run. But this is going to be, maybe I'll run it on a YouTube video and upload. I'm recording this as well, by the way, so you will see them on the blackboard. I'm capturing the screen. So for a later exam period, for example, we could watch it anywhere. I hope it worked, because the first part, when I give you a break, it just had an error, and I hope it saved it as well, but may not. We'll see. So this is where we're looking at the price of electricity and consumption of electricity. Notice that in regressions, this is when you estimate. The prices are on the horizontal axis, and quantity demanded, which is consumption usually, is on the vertical axis. And when we studied the demand, do you remember what we did? Prices were on the vertical axis. I'm going to go back just to get, yeah. You see the price here in the vertical axis, and quantity here is on the horizontal axis. This is the difference between theory and practice. The other one is more practical, right? We're collecting the data, actual data, and putting it into sort of regression analysis. So this is where confusion comes as well. A lot of students ask why this is so, but this is historical. There's no logical sort of explanation to why. Because if you think of x-axis as the determinant of the y-axis, the price really should be on the horizontal axis, and the quantity should really be here. Because quantity is being determined by the price, isn't it? And in statistics, usually we'll have the y-axis as the price, consumption, which is we call dependent variable, and the the price on the horizontal, which is independent. And let me go back and then explain what it is. So this is an example for you, is an idea of dissertation. Do you have to do a dissertation in this course? Yeah, think about doing demand analysis, for example, for a certain product. Or if you write a business project, this is part of your project, the part where you estimate, you forecast the demand, consumption, for example. So again, back to this case. One thing I didn't explain is this here. Quantity demanded is the dependent variable, because quantity demand depends on price, income, and everything else, right? So that's why it comes. The name comes from the dependent variable. The x's here, these are basically, if you think of this y equal to a plus x plus b, so b times x, then x's would be here the independent variables. Independent variables usually determine the dependent variables. So value, the quantity demand depends on the independent variables, on the factors that determine it. That's why in statistics we have this relationship, being on the x-axis the price and consumption on the y-axis. So we'll switch the curves. Now, and if you had, assume these are firms selling the same product. So this firm tells us that they sold the product throughout the year, for example, at £5, and this much they sold. And this firm says, increase the price to this point, but we sold this much. So each point here is a firm telling us the quantity they sold given the prices they had during the year, right? Is that clear? I'm trying to explain you the actual data. Now, one thing you can see, the trend is that downward sloping is consistent with the theory of the demand, right? Law of demand, that we always have negative slope between quantity and to analyze it further, in other words, to get the elasticity of demand with respect to price, then you fit a straight line using Excel in this case. This would be the regression line depicting the average relationship. As you can see, this point basically is being kind of captured by this point here, because it's a linear thing. If it was non-linear regression, most likely your line looks like this. You would be going up and down, but it's a linear relationship to make it easier to understand. And with a non-linear regression, it's very difficult to get the elasticity values. Anyway, so this point is being represented by this point on the curve, and these 2 points are somewhere here, given the price. This value is the actual value, but in theory, this is the demand. Yeah, and when we fit the line, so this average line or this line captures the average relationship between price and quantities here. Now, and there was a question of epsilon. Yeah, if you go back, and this value here, this is not elasticity value. It's just statisticians also adopted this letter to reflect the errors in our judgments or in our predictions. So quantity demanded was the blue line, prices were on the x-axis, and quantity demand was on the y-axis, and we had the orange dots. Now what happened is that when we tried to predict, are you copying this?
No, it's
Okay, yeah. When you try to predict the demand by fitting straight line, we are creating this error here. So the difference between this point and this point, given the price, this amount is the error. So is that clear, guys? This was the epsilon amount of error here. It's not important for this course, but because you will be business managers, you're reading the reports. In many cases, at some point, you may come across this article about demand analysis, and maybe you're interested in carrying out demand analysis. Then this is way forward, basically. You need to know the sort of basics of regression analysis, which I think I will have to record a video separately for this, how you could estimate with the data. So this line is actually a fitted line, so you have certain demand value, but because of the error, that epsilon is added to the actual relationship. So one more time, and I'll go on to the next level. So if you think of this not present here, just ignore this. This part would just give us the perfect prediction. If we had the price for a product, let's say £10, given the elasticity value and an intercept, I could predict how much the demand will be, right? But because of margin of error we'll have always, it's not easy to do. Then this will be added because of the error difference between actual and theoretical line. Yeah, so the difference there. is always there. And the convention is to give this to denote this as an epsilon. I think there is an example of measuring this as well. So residual price at certain price. This is basically an error that for a given price we have actual demand, but we predicted that for this given price average demand will be here, because at that point there is some other demand, the company that tells us there's different, different consumption value for a given, or more or less the same price. So the regression line tends to put the average value. This is the average predicted value through the actual data. Is that clear? It may not be at this point, but with time, as we do more examples. But if you have a question, do ask me now.
So would that be the optimal, the closer the dot to the line?
Yeah, you will get a perfect fit. If the dot is close to line, the error will minimize. And that's what the idea behind regression is. Regression analysis or regression line tends to capture all the data points, but because it's a linear relationship, it tends to give errors. But if, for example, the firms, when you did survey, tell you that the line basically, the dots are close to the line, it will be a perfect fit, near perfect. And there are different measures of measuring how perfect they are, but we are not going into this. This is called R squared and adjusted R squared. This measures how good the fit is to the data. That's something to. Do you have quantitative methods class or something like that? You don't. Yeah, that's because it's an MBA class, and usually MBAs do not have quantitative analysis class. But if you do MSc, most likely you just do hardcore statistics. But usually we tend to learn things on a simple analysis basis. Okay, so that's the same thing, but we tend to have the error here. Now this is with the multiple regression and error added here with all the variables. So simple regression, multiple regression. But we are not going to test the equation, given that there is no sort of need for it. However, we need to interpret the coefficient estimates. These do make sense. B is represented, as I said, the price elasticity of demand. C is income elasticity of demand, and D is the cross price elasticity for each of these substitute and complements. Any questions on the demand analysis? There's an interesting point here where we will do time series analysis. So the analysis of demand is in two forms. First is cross-sectional analysis, which is this one, because you're looking at the demand and many factors. And there's also time series analysis, where you will only look at demand but over time. Yeah, that's another way of analyzing the demand for a product. That's when we have we can do forecasting. So I'm gonna zoom through this one very quickly. We don't have enough time here. But what we do here is look at the time series example to analyze the demand in a simple way. We look at these factors now. So for example, let's look at this time series decomposition. So on the y-axis you have the sales, number of jumpers sold over time, from time 0 to 10, time 10. You can think of this as a 10-year period maybe, with quarters being hidden here. Well, implicitly assume that the quarterly values are available. Then this would be the demand for jumpers over time. So we could see the wiggles and jiggles and all this over time. The first thing you would ask is, what's the trend? Where is the trend taking us? Yeah. Then there's a special software to do that and method to do that. We fit the trend line. It turns out over time we had sort of decline in the overall sales. So this is the overall trend describing the actual movements of actual demand, but it's very, very much aggregate data. Basically, trend shows us on average where the demand for product is going. Yeah. So in the bottom line is that the demand from time 0 to 10 has declined, and it's actually reached the bottom and started increasing. So now we see positive developments in the market for jumpers, for example.
We don't have a price. We're assuming the price is fixed.
Yeah, we're not assuming price fixed. It's the second type of analysis. Remember, I told you two forms of analysis. First, cross-sectional, where you look at prices and all. But second one, you just look at the demand. That's this one, yeah. In this case, price are not fixed because this won't be going that way if it's price fixed. So obviously, every year we'll have, even every quarter, you have a price change here. Jumpers, so it's a seasonal product, yeah. It won't be £10 all season, you know. In summer you get jumper discounts, and in winter they will go up. But however, the point here is the time series analysis and how we could decompose the prices. Sales. So that's the demand base. Sales usually measures demand. And now another way of looking at it is this, looking at seasonality. You see, seasonal. It's quite seasonal. Towards the end of the year, sales tend to pick up because that's the fourth quarter. This is summertime, sales declining. There's still demand for jumpers, but they are declining, and then picks up. So you could actually analyze the fit a seasonal line. This is an imperfect seasonal fact. I mean, if you have the data, it will be a perfect example, but this is just drawn. Doesn't really exist. So even it says actual, it's just to describe it. Yeah, as you can see, towards the last quarter, demand picks up again here. Towards last quarter, demand picks up. So this is where the December-January period is, the second quarter, the first quarter of the following year. So you can decompose the seasonal fluctuations or cyclical fluctuations as well. So you can think of these cyclical fluctuations as recessions and booms and recessions, which is, in fact, that's what happens usually in the market. The long run changes in demand is usually. This can be characterized by looking at cyclicality of the market for this product. So this is the analysis of cyclical changes. Any questions on this? No questions? Right, so this is actually alone, on its own, is a big topic for an MBA course. You could have just separate topic analyzing quantitative analysis of business or quantitative analysis for business, and that's. But we do certain applications on the go, and hopefully we'll give you some sort of idea of what it is. But yeah, I'll record something on the regression part of it. Another thing is to look at the product life cycle and elasticity. I guess you all know what the product life cycle is, given that you've studied marketing or maybe some specialist other courses, special courses about it. So over time, this is basically the amount of sales over time. Introduction of the product, sales will be lower. There will be a phase where the sales will grow. And at some point the product matures, the market for product matures. Sales stall or start declining eventually when there's a decline phase comes. And at each point, elasticity will change. Yeah. If any question you can ask us, well, we all can discuss. That will be better, isn't it? Yeah, I'm not saying not to discuss, but it's just will help others as well.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, at the introduction stage, what do you think the elasticity of demand will be of a product? Or could be?
High,
High. Why do you think it's high?
because the product is new, so
Could be unique.
the responsiveness can be.
Yeah, responsiveness will be usually high. Sorry, did you say high?
Yeah.
Okay, it's gonna be low. Sorry, because there's no competitor. I just took it. It will be low, yeah, because it's unique. The response will be chance to price will be low, even if you just put high price. If it's unique, obviously there's little competition. There's no way that customer can buy elsewhere, so they will have to buy from you. So you think of the cocktail market for youth, going night outs and stuff like this. You will see in the beginning there were only a couple of bars offered in London, and this bar would have long queues. This would be the best cocktail bar or something like that. But eventually, as the cocktail market matured over time, elasticity become more elastic, or the demand for elasticity become more elastic, and elasticity become more high in value. And I don't know if it's in the decline phase now or at the maturing point, because certainly not growth anymore, because it's already being sold. it's widely sold, and it's not something unique in the market. I don't know what product could be unique, and the common products that you can think of, where it's always at the phase of growth or introductory phase. Used to be internet some years ago, in 1990s, 1995 and 2000. This period, the internet providers put as much as they could. They priced it. There was little competition, especially in the US. Obviously, it's outside the US, it was rare. But now we have the internet business somewhere here. Prices are slashing, yeah? Going down, not slashing. The prices are declining now because of the competition. So elasticity change over time, and given the elasticity, you could also determine the prices. Any questions on this? Okay, 5 minutes. I think I could finish here. Any questions? No questions. Nothing. Everyone wants to go. Okay. There will be one or two couple of slides which I'll continue for next week when everyone is fresh. But please read the 2 case studies to discuss when we start next week. And also, can I get this paper, please? That's this sort of piece of paper that everyone was. Yeah, thank you. I'll take it.
And are you going also to cut this?
Today, yes. I'm
Today
not.
is not.
I'll upload today plus the videos we can watch. I hope I can see them now because they crashed in earlier.